All right, back for episode 5. Welcome to the Nation80 Podcast. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Rodney. Got a lot of things to talk about today. Excited to get into the Halo trailer. Excited to get into talking about Reacher and then some Image comics.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's been a pretty interesting week of stuff compared to the previous one when we did episode 4. But before we get started, just a quick couple of announcements. We are still streaming, so there's going to be some more NBA 2K22 action. I'm having fun watching my Seattle Supersonics, and I'm kind of imagining this whole storyline in my head, so that's been exciting. Also, Michael has posted episode 4 of the podcast, and also we have Michael and Elias the Great, or the GOAT, playing Hypercharge. And man, I must admit, looks like Elias was getting worked in certain parts of that those clips you were showing, Mike.
Yeah, you know what's funny is that I actually was just talking to him today, and I was like, "Hey man, I figured out what the issue was because he didn't have his audio on. Come to find out, his mic was muted the whole time." So
Oh wow!
I was like, "Oh, okay." So I was like, "Man, maybe we'll jump on it in a couple of days and
Yeah,
try to
absolutely.
try to do another video." But yeah, check out that Hypercharge episode. They had a huge update for that game, and we did a gladiator style match against a cybernetic T-Rex, which was pretty insane.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. It kind of reminded me of the times that me, you, and my brother Brandon have gone against like bosses in, like, for example, Borderlands and a few other things.
Yeah, for real. Like it was crazy. Like we were like screaming. We're like, "Get out of there!" Like, we kept trying different strategies, and this was like on easy. We kept trying it on different strategies, and it just wasn't working for us. And we were trying to get the platinum award. So basically, you just don't get killed in this. And we finally got it. It took us about, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes to get this done. Again, this was on easy, but we were able to get it done eventually. But we tried to employ different styles, but this thing is shooting rockets, it's shooting lasers, it's running at you, it's grabbing you and ripping you apart Jurassic Park style. So it was pretty fun. It was pretty fun.
That's good. That's good. So we have two big things that took place this past week, and it's kind of either heads or tails here, but they both evolve around Microsoft. And so I guess the first thing we should possibly talk about here is we're going to, I say Microsoft, but I'm also should mention Sony, and I should also mention Halo. But first things first, let's go ahead and talk about Sony is going to buy the creators of the Halo and Destiny game, Bungie, for $3.6 billion. Sony Interactive announced, this article is coming to us from Variety. Sony Interactive announced a deal to acquire Bungie, the developer behind game franchises, including Halo and Destiny, for $3.6 billion. The deal will give Sony Games division access to Bungie's world-class approach to live game services and technology expertise, Sony said. Bungie will continue to operate independently as a subsidiary of Sony Interactive Entertainment. Base, which has more than 900 employees, is focused on long-term development of Destiny to expanding the Destiny universe and creating new worlds and future intellectual property. The Halo franchise is currently managed and developed by Microsoft-owned 343 Industries as part of Xbox Game Studios. As a long gestating TV series based on Halo's is set to premiere on Paramount Plus in March. Well, it looks like we're going tit for tat now. So Microsoft says, hey, we're going to go out here and we're going to buy Activision. And, unfortunately, just how things work, everybody was like, oh, what's Sony going to do? What's Sony going to do? And well, Sony decided to drop down and say, hey, guess what? We're going to buy Bungie. And so, Mike, how about you tell us what you think about this whole thing?
Yeah, so I think the initial reaction was, Microsoft, they did what they had to do with Activision, and they spent like $64 billion. And so what's Sony going to do? And then Sony announces this deal. And so I think the initial reaction was, this is what Sony's reaction is to Microsoft. And from what I understand, this deal has been in the works for almost a year. So I'm not sure how much of it was a reaction or how much of it was really, hey, we know Microsoft is about to do something. They're about to snatch up a bunch of IPs and a bunch of creators and producers or game developers, and so we need to start snatching up our own game developers. So let's get that in motion. Them acquiring Bungie for that $3.6 billion, which is no small number to laugh at. Is interesting. You're not going to be seeing obviously Halo on the PlayStation because that's like, as you just mentioned, it belongs to somebody else now. But Destiny is something that we could see on PlayStation. And then from what I understand as well is that Sony is also kind of doing this to uh, not only bolster their game developers, but to bolster their entertainment IP. So like we're going to be talking about Halo today. We could see Destiny, a live action Destiny TV show. And so it's interesting what these companies are doing. And between Microsoft and Sony, my initial thought is like, okay, well, what's Nintendo gonna do? Like, is Nintendo gonna come out and be like, yeah, man, we're gonna go ahead and buy 2K or something like that? Like it, what's the deal? So I think as we these next couple of years go, uh you start to see the kind of lines blur between these different systems. That exclusivity that you were used to seeing, a decade ago is almost completely gone. Like, the MLB The Show just got announced for the Nintendo Switch. And it's already on Xbox now. That used to be a PlayStation only game. And now you can get it on Xbox, and now you can get it on the Nintendo Switch, which I think is awesome. So I think it's a good move for Sony. I think that there's some possibilities. Again, I keep hearing these whispers of SOCOM and how this move can help bring such games. The biggest thing is that it's going to help. The biggest comparison I've seen that I thought was really important was that Microsoft is really great at these like massive online multiplayer games, these online first person shooters and this and that, but they're terrible at story based games. Whereas PlayStation is great at these story based games, but they haven't really done much in the space of those massive multiplayer games like a Destiny. And so this move can help Sony get into that game, into that genre of games, and help them to, it won't be Destiny, but they can do something. They were talking like, well, maybe it can be like a SOCOM type deal, where it's like you use SOCOM, but in a way that Destiny is built, which I think is pretty interesting. I think would be really cool. So I think it's a good move for Sony.
Yeah, absolutely. So I saw a quick article earlier this week. I only saw the title, but they were basically saying that Sony and Microsoft are in a content race where they're both just trying to, we've kind of seen EA do it as well. We see now Microsoft is doing it and Sony is doing it, where you're just trying to grab as many of these properties as you can so that you can pump out as much content with all these studios under your belt. And so when I look at this, it's no shocker that people are kind of aligning themselves to sides and stuff like that. But I'd be remiss to think that they're going to keep everything not to be exclusive in the future, especially when it comes to Destiny's 2. When you have a property like Destiny 2 and you have another property in Microsoft like Call of Duty, I think again, like I kind of did my little crystal ball a couple weeks ago. When a new system comes out, why would you not be the first to have a particular game out there hoping to raise your numbers? Now, don't get me wrong, they'll eventually probably have it come to the PlayStation or something else. But let's be clear, this is still an arms race. Like, Remember back in the day when you used to look at Xbox and you'd be like, well, that's the inferior system because Sony had so much. And then this year, I must admit, even though PlayStation still has a lot of exclusive games, Xbox has been knocking it out the park with that Game Pass. So it just seems like the arms race is still going on. And yes, it's another move in business. I get it, but to not use that to your advantage would be kind of wild. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do in the future. But one of the things that came out of this, and as we move on, we're going to finally talk about something that we've been hearing the bubblings of for a while, and that is the Halo TV series. And so, what they decided to do is, since this is premiering on Paramount Plus, is that they decided to, during the AFC Championship game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Cincinnati Bengals, which I heard was an amazing game, they decided to release a 1-minute teaser that previews that longer trailer originally set to debut during the game. It flashes between clips of the live action series and both teams on the field via IGN. And at around the 52 mark, you can hear the announcer state the fast approaching release date. And so we finally got that trailer out where we got a whole bunch of action, and we saw our familiar boy, we saw Master Chief, and we saw Cortana, and we didn't really get a good look at the aliens. We got like a close-up. We didn't really see them from afar, but it's going to be interesting to see Halo get done. There's some Halo, what would you call it? There's some real strict Halo fans, right? And I already know that there's, I guess you can say, quote unquote, issues with how Cortana was displayed to us. But you know what? It is what it is. And I'm kind of excited to see this. I hate to say it, it's not that big on my radar because it's on Paramount Plus, and I don't know if I want to get another streaming service for it. But Mike, what is your feelings on the Halo series?
Yeah, so I do have Paramount Plus, mainly because I'm a huge Star Trek fan, and I love Star Trek Discovery. So I already have Paramount Plus, and I saw the trailer, and I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence about it. One, it doesn't look like they're going off of, it's their own adaptation of Halo. It doesn't look like it's not going off of any of the stories from the games. And then two, uh, I'm 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 looking at the CGI of it and some of the action, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know. It just doesn't look as, I don't know what to really expect from it. So I'm kind of on the fence about it. I'm not sure it's gonna be that show that I'm just super excited about. I mean, even when it was announced, I don't know if I was really super excited about it. Like, to do a Halo properly, it's got to be big budget. Uh, and not that Paramount Plus can't do big budget, because if you've watched Star Trek Discovery, it's a big budget show. Um, but I think for Halo the series, you got to have an even bigger budget, because to me, that the Halo story, the Halo lore is huge. It's massive. It's almost kind of like The Expanse. And so it's super massive. You got aliens, you've got the humans, you've got you've got the humans, you've got the Covenant, then you've got the Horde, and then you've got the ancient beings or whatever. And so there's a lot going on within the Halo universe. And so looking at the trailer, I'm thinking, man, this has got nothing to do with the games whatsoever. It's just their adaptation, which is fine. It's fine. I'm like I said, I'm on the fence about it. I don't know. I mean, obviously I'm going to check it out, but it's not a huge deal if I miss it. I'm more upset that I've already missed or didn't realize that the new Reacher series was out. But if if the roles were reversed for Halo and Reacher, oh man, Halo's out. Oh, okay, I'll catch it whenever I have time to catch it. I just I don't know. I'll check it out for sure. I'm just tempering my expectations. I really am, because after that trailer, I was kind of like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now I understand that. I'm kind of the same way. I don't really have much expectation for it. I know this is something they've been trying to work on for ages. I think at one time Halo was with HBO Max, and then that kind of faltered, and then it worked its way over to Paramount. And it's one of those properties that I think, and it's another video game property where I think it might be hard for it to translate to even the small screen or big screen. But it's going to be interesting to see if they can accomplish anything with it. Even if, you know what, I'd be happy if they can even, if let's say the first season is shaky, but it looks like there's potential, and then they knock it out the park with the second season.
Right.
You know, I can be happy with that. But there's so much out there that, you know, Halo and yes, I've been watching Star Trek Discovery as well. And because I forgot that was the CBS app. But previously, before it turned into the Paramount. But you know, it's just one of those things. I don't know. It's almost kind of like how I used to look at Titans when Titans was under DC Universe and not HBO Max. Like, will it get enough eyes for someone to look at? Can it draw? Because I'm curious if Paramount's like, man, this will draw people to the app, or will it just cause it? Will it cause people to go, I'll just wait until either I can get it off of, you know, Apple TV for pay or something like that instead of getting the app itself. It just depends. And same thing with, I know what you're saying about the lore, but the interesting thing is I haven't played a Halo game since maybe Halo Reach or what is it, ODST back in the day.
Oh yeah.
So there's a lot, and then I don't know, like, in all sincerity, I don't know how popular Halo is these days, because, you know, as much as people are, because like people are still clamoring for another good Halo game. I don't think Halo Infinite has, you know, really knocked it out the park like they were expecting. And so I'm kind of curious if, you know, Halo's kind of cold right now, just in general, you know.
Right.
uh
Yeah, no, I agree. And that goes back to what I was saying before, where Microsoft is great at doing like the massive online, multiplayer online games. They're great at doing that. Uh, but they're just not as good as PlayStation when it comes to doing story driven games.
yeah.
And so Halo, like I haven't played Halo Infinite, uh, but Halo, when they developed that game, was really centered on the online experience. And, you know, when they first started doing like the beta testing and getting it out to the people, they did the online portion of it. Um, and so they put the others, not that they put the story on the back burner, but it didn't feel like the story was a huge priority for them.
Mm.
And I've listened to a lot of people talk about how they only play Halo for the online games, and that's fine. I personally would rather play story driven games uh, than online games. But as far as it being, is Halo cold? Are people gonna? I absolutely agree. I mean, I think it's a gamble for Paramount Plus. I don't even know if it's really a gamble. I think it's more of a, hey, we're gonna try this thing, and
We'll
because
test the
Paramount Plus,
waters.
yeah, because I think Paramount Plus has a ton of original series already that have already gotten them to where they are. And so, I mean, between the Star Trek show, so you got Star Trek Discovery, you got Star Trek Picard. They're gonna have another Enterprise come out, and then you've got the Yellowstone series, and then the prequel to that series out as well. Uh, those are doing very well. So I think it's kind of let's see what sticks and what doesn't stick. The trailer kind
Mhm.
of reminded me like the visual quality of it. I mean, yeah, I kind of golfed at Cortana too. I was like, "Ugh, I don't know." But I think the visual aspect of it kind of reminded me like, I mean, these might as well just be cutscenes from Halo Infinite. to be honest. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so that's what I'm talking. Like, to me, at least, the Halo stories are really good, but if that doesn't translate well, because right now they're making it seem like everything's on the Master Chief. The Master Chief is the one that discovered Halo and this and that, and it just seems kind of ridiculous to me. When the Halo universe is so much more than just the actual Halo, you know, and they made it seem like it was an artifact. You know, I touched this thing and it changed me, and blah 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 blah. No, like, I was kind of okay. Here I'm about to go off. Okay, because as I'm thinking about this, I'm like, okay, they made it seem like Halo was some kind of artifact, and when he touched it, it changed him. And before that, they were talking about how, oh, we can control them, and you know, like it was what's the movie with Jean-Claude Van Universal Soldier. Okay, they made it seem like, you know, the Spartans were like the Universal Soldiers or whatever. And so I'm like, no, that's not how it really is. I mean, yes, the original Spartans were, you know, a bunch of kids that were taken from their parents, and they were brainwashed and genetically altered to, you know, become these superhuman soldiers. But that was it. You know, it wasn't like they had a control chip in their head and this and that or whatever. They just were raised. They were raised just like Universal Soldier. You know, that movie basically. And so I don't know. I'm not as excited as I thought it would be. You know,
It's been
and
too long. In
I,
all honesty, it's been too long.
yeah, and I think you're right. I think it has been way too long. I think that it's a little too too late. But like you said, though, I think, you know, maybe the first season doesn't go well, and they try a second season and it does awesome. I don't know. We'll see.
What was the Halo series that had our boy Luke Cage from the Netflix series?
That was
Remember?
so ODST had Nathan Fillion in it.
Okay.
Okay.
But there was an actual movie, TV show. I can't remember what it was called. And it had, I just remember the guy who played Luke Cage, whose name escapes me at the moment, Michael Coulter.
Yes.
Michael Coulter was in it. And it wasn't, Master Chief was nowhere to be seen in it.
Yeah, so that actually came after Halo 3. Okay. Because so you have like different generations of Spartans. Like the first generation of Spartans, those were like the inhumane, that's where you got Master Chief from. And then after that, that's when the doctor, I can't remember her name in the show, or the lore. But that's when you had her like kind of on the run, and you know, there's human rights violations. They're like, I can't believe you did this and whatever. And but then you have like the Spartan program going forward is actually taking volunteers, and they're not genetically engineering them. They're just giving them better tech and better suits or whatever. And that's why they're not as big as the original Spartans. And so that's when you get Michael Coulter's Spartan. And it becomes like his team and his Spartan are introduced to go after the doctor, basically. And when they eventually get her, that's when the Master Chief eventually comes back, and you know, Master Chief and Coulter's Spartan, of course, they're beefing with each other. And so I can't remember the show or the movie or whatever. I just know the video game storyline from that. And that was at a point where, like I said, Master Chief was gone, he was missing, and this guy kind of took over and became the reliable Spartans for the UNC. And their primary mission was to capture the doctor, as she was, you know, fleeing for her life and everything like that, and making deals with the Covenant aliens there. So
Mike, I'm sorry, I was mistaken. So while you were talking, I decided to go ahead and look things up. So I was mistaken. What I was thinking with Mike Coulter was incorrect. So Mike Coulter played, he was an agent in Halo 5, and he played, I can't find his name now, but there was a particular agent that he played in that game. He was the motion capture for Agent Locke in Halo 5, Guardians.
Right. He's actual Spartan. Yeah, Spartan Locke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so the show I was thinking about, there was a Halo 4 Forward on Unto Dawn, where they did a quick live action web series, and that's what I was thinking of, right? And I remember that, and I don't remember that in high regard. But with that being said, even then, and that show came out in 2000. Matter of fact, if I am to be honest, once 343 Industries got Halo, I was already out. I already kind of had checked out.
Right.
And well, I waited for the first game for them to come out, and then it just wasn't as mind blowing as like I think 1, 2, and 3 that came out through Bungie, and it was really hard to bring me back in. Don't get me wrong, I played the games, but it just never came back to that same level of excitement as before.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, yeah, so it was Halo Nightfall. It was a web series. And so yeah, he was an intelligence officer, I guess, is that's where the agent part of it came in, but that's where that next generation of Spartans were basically volunteers, and he became a Spartan to lead that team in Halo 5. And that's when you had like the beef between him and Master Chief eventually. And so, and actually, I want to say Nathan Fillion is actually on his team now that I think about it, because Nathan Fillion was the ODST guy from the Halo ODST game.
No, it's funny now that you mentioned it, I do remember him in the ODST games.
Yeah, and that was my, and it's odd to say, I thought Halo ODST was probably one of my favorite Halo games.
It was good. You know what? Because you got more personality out of the Spartans, I think.
Yeah.
Compared to, it's just Master Chief and Cortana in a lot of those. And looking, I mean, they're still great games, but ODST, you just had, because I think ODST was like 4 of them, right? As a crew? Or
Yeah,
was that Reach?
No, so ODST, those were, so they weren't Spartans, they were just straight up, they're basically airborne guys.
Okay, got you.
Okay. And then Reach those were the original first generation Spartans that they're, this is our last stand, and they all die in the end. But Nathan Fillion was part of that crew that they were basically, the UNSC version of airborne guys. So that, again, like I said, that to me, I thought was it kind of expanded the universe, because like you said, it wasn't focused on just the Master Chief, it wasn't just focused on the Cortana and Halo. It happened to be like, this is what's going on outside of that, and it was awesome. I loved it. And like you said, once you had the switch in developers, I think it kind of started to really go down. And again, as you said before, just the time between, it's kind of like Star Wars, right? After Return of the Jedi, the time between Return of the Jedi and the latest Star Wars movies was just such a big gap. It's like Top Gun. Top Gun came out like 1989 and 1990, something like that. And we're supposedly getting a sequel that was supposed to be out like 2 years ago. It's a long time to go between stories. And what's the interest? Like you said, what's the interest? People that like you and me who were interested in Halo when it first came out, cool. But we've moved on, I think.
Yeah, the signs of the times.
Right. And then now you got this generation now. Well, do they really care about Halo? So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to change subjects here a bit. We're going to talk about something that's very near and dear to my heart. We're going to talk about Image Comics, and they're getting ready to celebrate their 30th anniversary in 2022. Now, I am going to be the first to tell you, and Michael could tell you, and if my brother was online as well, my brother will tell you that Image was very detrimental to us as we were coming up. Don't get me wrong, Marvel played a part, DC played a part, but there was something about when Image first hit the ground and that issue of Spawn came out, Youngblood, Wildcats, Savage Dragon, Shadowhawk, Wetworks, and Cyberforce, to name a few. I might be forgetting someone there. We can even mention Pitt. Pitt was another one that was in that class of books that first came out that had me running back to the comic book store. Michael knows I'm a big Shadowhawk fan. I have a couple commissions. Jim Valentino has been one of my favorite artists for years. And just because, quite honestly, he was at the time, the characters gone through different changes. But John Paulstone, I believe his name is, or it's Paul Johnstone. The very first Shadowhawk was African American, and he went. And when I first saw him, I was taken aback because it was the first one I seen on the printed page. Now, don't get me wrong, there was Luke Cage, but I don't recall running to Luke Cage later on in life. And so it's a big deal for it to be hitting its 30th anniversary. So before I ask Michael to mention a few things, let me just bring up the article that I have here, brought to us from Game Radar on MSN, that although the actual 30th anniversary of Image Comics won't be until April 2022, the month Youngblood #1 debuted, co-founder, vice president Jim Valentino is working on the book, The Official Image Comics Timeline, to be published in February 2022.
Oh, nice.
One of the other things that came out of this also brings up the availability or lack thereof of the first wave of Image Comics from the founders. While the first issues of Spawn, Savage Dragon, even Wildcats and Wetworks, thanks to DC, have been made relatively available in print collections and or digital editions, other Image Comics titles such as Youngblood #1, Shadowhawk #1, and Cyberforce #1 are only available in back issue bins. That's before mentioning other early Image Comics from the 90s. We brought this up to Eric Stevenson, who is the head, basically he's the head, I don't want to call him the CEO, but the head publisher of Image Comics. All the founders have kind of taken a step back from in the current years, who broke into comics as an assistant to Jim Valentino back in the early 1990s about the potential of those early Image Comics being available again. And without going to specifics, that some is underway. Some of that stuff is in the works, but if a creator is no longer associated with Image, we don't manage their back catalog. Stevenson tells Newsrama, we don't own that stuff. The creators do. And if you look at something like that, if you're looking for something like Keith Giffen's Trencher, well, yeah, that would be cool to have a trade paperback of that stuff. And it would be cool if it was available digitally. But that's Keith's call, not ours. And so that's been an issue that I know I can speak on, because none of Shadowhawk has been on any digital platform, which hurts my heart. As you know, I still want to read it. I do have the physical copies of it, but it sucks not to have that digitally. Mike, how do you feel about the 30th anniversary, and how do you feel about Image's availability of their early catalogs?
Yeah, so speaking on the early catalogs, as you mentioned, we grew up, I feel like, on Image Comics, and I think Image Comics was really what got us into being creative. We tried to create our own comics. We were doing a lot of drawings, and a lot of that, I believe, was based off of the Image Comics. Like you mentioned, Youngblood. I mean, man, Youngblood was my jam. Shadowhawk, Savage Dragon, Spawn. Those were just classic, comics. And I am saddened to hear the unavailability of those classic hardcovers. It's a shame, and I've been kind of going through this thing where I want to be able to preserve certain comics and have I love having digital, don't get it twisted. I love having digital comics. I'm not the kind of guy that has long boxes of comics. I just don't have the space for it. And these kids around here are too volatile, and if they were to ever destroy the comics, I don't know what's going to happen. So I love digital comics, or the digital editions of them. But for those ones that I really love, those ones that I really enjoy, I try to keep a hard copy available. That way I can have it for display as not even just as preservation, but as art. And so it's very discouraging to hear that. Um, Image being on its 30th anniversary is huge. We mentioned Youngblood and Shadowhawk and Savage Dragon and Spawn, Jim Valentino. Those are all great characters or great stories. Um, and when you see where they've come from and to where they are now, Image has so many great stories right now, uh, and some of my favorite ones, whether it's Copperhead or I mean even Invincible. I mean Invincible is a great comic. Black Science, East West, and Noctera. Those are all just super great stories that are coming, and these are people that have left their mainstream, whether it's Marvel or DC, to do these own creator owned comics with Image, and they're phenomenal, and I love Image for that. So I'm excited to see where they go from here. I'm currently reading Noctera right now, and I think it's one of those stories that I'm just gonna love. That's by Scott Snyder, and I'm totally with it. Copperhead, that was another one that I really loved. Of course, Invincible is a beloved one, and has its own TV show. Black Science was one that you got me onto, and that was I actually want to get back to that because I thought that was just it's something that's different. I think that's what is important about Image, is that it's not DC, it's not Marvel, where you have these massive universes that have to be tied in together. And Image isn't like that. Yeah, you might see crossovers every now and then with some of these comics. You saw a lot with Invincible, and Savage Dragon. But you have these different universes. You talk about East West and this dystopian universe, and the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. You've got Copperhead, which is kind of like a Firefly type
Western,
of
a bit.
yeah, like a sci-fi Western like Firefly. You got Black Science, where you got this guy traveling through different dimensions, and it's kind of like a rated R version of Sliders, or trying to think of the older version of that TV show with
Quantum Leap.
Yes, Quantum Leap. And then Noctera, where it's kind of like pitch black, so
yeah, I was gonna say there's a lot of writers now that started off with Image that have worked their way into some of the big ones, and I understand why you have to, because hey, number one, they give you healthcare, and if you got a family, you got to do what you got to do. But there's also Descender that I'm looking over here in my bookcase now. Deadly Class.
Oh yeah, Descender. Yeah,
I really wish that the Deadly Class TV show had survived at Sci-Fi, but Sci-Fi couldn't keep that up. There's also Lazarus. Ed Brubaker did some wonderful stuff that me and Michael read in our early podcasts. Him and Sean Phillips. But while we're talking about, let's talk about some new stuff that while the 30th anniversary is going on, Image is also bringing back out. The Return of Saga is coming back in January 2022. I really love that series. I haven't had the time to sit down and completely read it the way I wanted it to, but I have nothing but great things to say about it. Of course, we talked about it before, the official Image Comics timeline, which is coming out in February. I need to pre-order that because I would love to have that in the house, just as a trip down memory lane. A new Witchblade series is coming. I remember when Witchblade and Darkness was the hottest things on the market. And when I say that, not only them, but Wildstorm had some stuff, Gen 13 at the time, that was, you couldn't find a first printing to save your life. It just, I know it kind of just fell off, but I remember they had built such interesting universe between the Witchblade and Darkness. So it's going to be interesting to see that come out. I'm excited. The Walking Dead returns June 2022. It looks like this one is more focused on Clementine. If you don't remember the was it Telltale games, which had Clementine as one of the main characters, especially Walking Dead 2. It looks like now she's going to get her own series. I don't know how long it's going to go, but it's interesting to see how that's going to turn out. Then we do a blast in the past. Rob Liefeld's Prophet is going to return.
Oh,
and I didn't know this, but apparently there's news of a Prophet movie that is based off, that's going to have Jake Gyllenhaal as the star. And so it's apparently it's getting its go. And with that being said, we also get Prophet coming soon. As much as I would love to be excited about this, and as much as I personally love Rob Liefeld, his ability to delay projects makes me just look at this with a grain of salt. Like, I want to see this, but if you look online and you type up Brigade and the fact that he had a Kickstarter where he was supposed to produce a book for it, and I think that was 3 years ago, I think he got like $250,000 for that, and nothing has been returned. This makes me very hesitant. And I'm sure for any backer of that book, nothing probably grinds their gears more than seeing a Deadpool book come out, or I think, what was it, Weapons X book come out after that, or anything else that he's been associated with since then, and you're still waiting for your book to come out. As we continue to go here, we have Astro City coming back. I never watched that. I never read that series before, but I always remember it was in high regard. It's something I probably would like to maybe read once I get the time. We have Shadowhawk returning. There's not much details on that, but you know me, I'm excited. And if there's an OA from Jim Valentino, boy, your boy's all over that. And
right, yeah.
I already talked about Darkness, and they're bringing back the original print of Cyberforce. I know they just did a Kickstarter for this. I've been meaning to jump on that, so I need to do that. And then there's also a dedicated comic book convention on a cruise ship. Not for me, but I'm glad they're trying new things. And then, of course, there's new titles coming out, which I'll just say there's new titles coming out because there's quite a few here.
Right.
But super excited to see what Image brings out. I love their work in the past. I love how they changed with the times too, right? Because, you know, they could have stayed to the same routine, superhero. But giving these creators the ability to do some amazing stories has kept, to me, the lights on at Image. But we still love the past as well. So I'm really excited to see what Image does. And you know what really sucks about this, I'm just bringing this up momentarily, is because Michael brought up Youngblood earlier. For those who don't know, apparently Rob Liefeld, as he was working out a deal to get, I think, more exposure for Youngblood, he kind of like gave up half the rights of Youngblood to another individual. And that other individual has done a horrid job, and that's why they kind of backed out of the Netflix deal, I think. It's why Youngblood is currently not in publication, because there's been a couple restarts, but because, I guess, of this agreement that Rob Liefeld has with this other individual, Rob Liefeld in protest is like, well, since he's ruining my characters, I'm going to go away from them and start working on other things, which sucks because Mike, I think you know there was two main characters in that show. I mean, in that book. One of them being Sentinel, who was kind of like your Tony Stark, and Die Hard. Die Hard was a beast. Like, I remember when we first saw him on the page. But
I think we tried to draw Die Hard
multiple times.
Multiple times. Make our own versions. I mean,
yes, because he looks like Spider-Man and Deadpool to an extent.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know, and then he has some history with Super Patriot and some others.
That's right. Yeah,
and some other characters that belong to Eric Larson and the Savage Dragon crew. And so, you know, you had that. And then one last one that comes to mind, and then I'll give it to you, Mike, is Stormwatch. Battalion was was another Black superhero, leader of a team. The books were extremely well drawn. Unfortunately, I remember from the first edition of those books, the artist, I think it's Matt Broom. He's passed away since then, I think, due to cancer. But I'll never forget, or it was Scott Clark, one of the two. Their art was amazing, and you know, it was another one of those books that I couldn't wait to read over and over again. But as the times also change, we remember that the cover might be Rob Liefeld, and then you have a new up and coming artist doing the interiors, and you can tell that they just learned how to draw yesterday because they had so many books out at that time that you're like, oh man, Rob Liefeld's got Team Youngblood, Prophet, and all this other stuff, and they couldn't keep an artist in the room, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But that's how it goes. Mike, go ahead and give us some more that you have on Image.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of Shadowhawk and how you talked about how back then, there wasn't that much for us to read that we could relate to as far as, Black individuals in this country, right? Yes, you had Luke Cage and you had Black Panther, but that was pretty much it. And it was like, all right, well, I mean, they're kind of like these over exaggerated versions of
Absolutely
of a guy who's a thug and then a guy who's an African prince, and it's like, I can't fucking get down with that. I mean,
who was a pimp?
Right? Yeah.
Was it Luke Cage or was it like Black Lightning? One of those was a pimp, and then
I think it was Luke Cage.
Oh man.
And so it's like, okay, whatever. And I even as a kid growing up, I just, so at my company, I handled the Black History Month, and I sent out emails daily. And so I sent one out recently about Kevin Gruvot and his contributions, especially as far as creating Blue Marvel, Adam Brashear. And I had sent in this email that, growing up, I loved comics and I was huge into Spider-Man. But that was pretty much it, like Spider-Man was as close as I could identify with. And I couldn't really identify with anybody else. And so when we got to Image, and then we got to Shadowhawk, at least the first iteration, I guess, of Shadowhawk, because the first iteration of Shadowhawk is I think was Paul Johnstone. And he was this Black dude that I was like, man, okay, this dude is trying to do right by Harlem and this and that, and he's breaking people's backs. Like, it's funny. It's like, there's always the argument with Batman. Like what's the point of Batman if he's just gonna beat people up, put them in jail, they're gonna get back out and commit crimes, whether it's murder, like the Joker. Whereas you have Shadowhawk or Paul Johnstone, yeah, he's beating dudes up, but he's breaking their backs. Like, I'm gonna send you to jail, but you're gonna be you're not gonna walk for the rest of your life,
And he used to do that shit perfectly. That he was like, you're paralyzed. You're not.
He's like, I'm gonna take this elbow, snap, and it's like, oh shit, this dude just snapped this dude's back. Oh my god! And so I was like, man, I okay, I can get down with that. Like, I'm not gonna kill you. Okay, I'm gonna make it worse for you. I'm gonna actually break your back. All right. So now you can't do nothing. And so I thought that was awesome. I can't remember which issue it was. But I thought it was supremely important and huge. There's an issue where Shadowhawk is doing his thing, and there's another character who is basically mimicking Shadowhawk, but I think he's actually killing people.
And he was a white nationalist as well.
Yes, yeah, he's a white dude. He's like an Aryan Nation type dude, and he kills some brothers or something like that. And then there's a great panel where Shadowhawk takes off his helmet and takes off his mask. He's like, "You mean like me? Like you're killing people like me?" And the guy's like, "Oh my god, you're Black." It was one of those great comic book moments for me that I was like, "Damn, man." And then they killed him off. And I fell off of Shadowhawk. But to be fair, like it was something that we hadn't seen in comic books, and I could get down with that. I could totally get down with that. And so I'm excited. Like if they bring Shadowhawk back, I hope they bring back it as Paul Johnstone. I think that would be supremely awesome.
Mike, I don't know if you remember, but how disappointing was it that Paul Johnstone and Chapel both had HIV and both died of AIDS?
Yeah. Yeah, what kind of messed up?
like from what I remember, Shadowhawk became Shadowhawk because he was like a prosecutor, and
Yes.
some
Yes.
guys were upset that he was going to rule on some sort of case, and so they injected him with HIV. And then in Chapel's case, Chapel, Spawn, and some other guy worked for some sort of secret agency, and to keep them in line, they kept HIV dormant in them so that once they went rogue, they would then let it loose into their body. And at that time, and you guys might not understand this as you listen to this, but in the 1990s, how prevalent HIV and AIDS was. Don't get me wrong, it was a talking piece everywhere, but the way that it was portrayed in the African American community was pretty disrespectful. So, as much as I love Shadowhawk, that did, like Michael said, you kind of fall off from it from there, because it was one of those things where it's like, really, this is where
Right.
we're going to go with that.
And who injects somebody with HIV? Like
Yeah.
I'm automatically thinking of I don't know if you ever watched South Park. I don't know if our listeners have ever watched South Park. I'm a huge South Park fan. But there's literally an episode where Eric Cartman injects because he has HIV. He injects the HIV virus into Kyle because Kyle's making fun of him because he contracted HIV. And so he literally takes like a syringe and injects Kyle with HIV. And it's like, that's the most ridiculous thing. You know, I expect that from South Park. But in the premise of the story with Shadowhawk, or like you said with Sentinel, is like, come on, man. What?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember the Shadowhawk part of it. I completely blanked on Sentinel getting HIV.
No, it wasn't Sentinel. It was Chapel. Remember the
Chapel.
guy who
Yeah,
had the
Chapel.
skull on his face? Black guy.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
He
Chapel. That was another great character.
Yeah, and Chapel was like he was like a different type of Punisher. Like everyone used to have the gun guy, the big guy, the guy with claws. Like they were all imitation of the X-Men, unfortunately. But you always had those type of characters, and Chapel was pretty well done. And Chapel was responsible for killing Spawn. And I think
Yes.
after Rob Liefeld had a disagreement, Todd McFarlane changed that. And then Rob Liefeld ended up coming back anyway. But regardless, I remember he committed suicide because he was going to die of HIV anyway. And there's a whole nother storyline that I won't get into now about that. But yeah, it in those times, that was for me. I kind of scratched my head and I was like, man, that made no sense because it was so close together too that it didn't help anything. And taking that out of the way, unfortunately, we lost Wildstorm because Jim Lee eventually moved over to DC, and I give him props for what he did. He helped cultivate Image Comics, but he's also done some wonderful things at DC. They're not always been the greatest. I'm looking at you, New 52, but he's also brought a lot of his products over to DC, which is good to see as well. So I've been very excited about that. Top Cow, I haven't heard much about these days. I did read something of theirs back in the day, but there hasn't been much there. So I'm kind of interested to see, to take a look and dive in and see what's going on from there. Eric Larson's book has been going on forever, and he's drawn every issue. I'm 100% happy about that. I haven't read it in a while, but it's just cool for someone, in this day and age where the artist changes every 5 issues. It's just cool to see someone stay on a book for a prolonged amount of time.
Right.
It was cool to see that with Invincible back in the day as well, before Otley left and went to Marvel. But he did a phenomenal job when he was doing Invincible. And Spawn is still out there. And I just read before we came on, King Spawn, which came out recently, was #1 on the charts. And Spawn has been going for ages. And it's just impressive to see how much Spawn is just still exciting to people. I kind of fell off a long time ago. It wasn't for me. But again, another cool thing for Image that these books have been going on forever. And we could talk about all the other books that branched off from this, but there's just not enough time for that. But we want to finish off this podcast. As you know, this is the month of February. February is Black History Month. Of course, we celebrate Black history all year round, but of course, we want to key in more in February and talk just about some amazing people out there that have spearheaded creation, imagination, and all these things that, honestly, before the internet you don't know who these people are. You don't understand how they got into the business. Before I get started, I just want to say, big respect to Larry Stroman, and I can't remember it. I know his last name is Johnson, but they brought us the book Tribe back in the day, right? And Milestone. When I say that, Larry Stroman didn't, but Milestone at DC. Those were big things, and I hate to say it, I didn't follow it like I should have back then, because you only got like $5, you only have a handful of books, so you went with what you knew. And but we did get Static Shock out of that, and some other amazing characters on that side. And I intend to get a couple trades to go back on those things. But now that I'm older, I understand how big of a moment that was. I remember during, I think, COVID or before COVID, Jim Lee was talking to the creators of Milestone. Unfortunately, we lost Dwayne McDuffie back in the day due to a heart issue. But Jim Lee was comparing notes, and he was like, man, you guys came in the room so serious. Y'all had suits on and all this other stuff. And the guy said it was because we knew that they would go off after anything to deny us this opportunity, compared to the guys we're just talking about, image, jeans and t-shirts, right? And that sounds like, you might go, well, it is what it is. No, back in those days, your opinion, if someone had dreads, if someone had braids, if someone had an earring, that's all it took for someone to turn their face and turn their nose to you and to say that you're not for this industry. And so, those guys broke the path through. But today we're going to talk about two individuals. Michael, you started with yours already, so I'm going to let you go first. And go ahead and tell us who you brought.
Yeah, so, as I mentioned before, I am the I guess the point of contact for my one area of interest in my company for Black History Month. And the other day I did Kevin Groovo. And Kevin Groovo, if you don't know him, you should know him. I'm a Chicago-born kid, and this guy is also a Chicago-born kid. And he is the co-creator of the Underworld series, with Kate Beckinsale. And so Underworld and I Frankenstein, actually, now that I think about it. And so very, very talented person. But he's a total, and he not only did he co-create it, but he also started the movie. He was one of the Lycans. He was a Black Lycan in the original Underworld. And so very cool guy. Very I really want to talk to this guy. If I had a wish list of people I want to interview, he's at the top of that list, because he's one of those guys that you look at him and you're like, man, this dude looks like a football player. But he's a total nerd. This is a guy that majored. He got his bachelor's degree at Howard University in the sciences, and was going for his PhD in genetic engineering. I think he got his bachelor's degree in microbiology. And so instead of finishing his PhD with genetic and engineering, he decided that he wanted to pursue his passions with writing in Hollywood. And that's where you got, Underworld and I Frankenstein. And so obviously, I Frankenstein, it was all right. It wasn't like, the greatest thing since sliced bread, but Underworld, at least the first two movies, were freaking phenomenal. Loved them. And it got to the point where he decided he was going to go to Marvel and talk to them, because he had this issue where are our Black characters and Black representation within Marvel Comics. Yes, you have Blade, and you have Black Panther, and you have Storm, and you have uh, Luke Cage, but that's pretty much it. you know and they're extremes. There's so extremes, and his thing was, you know why is there no black Superman? um and so he sought to create Adam Brashear, and he did it in a way that I thought was just amazing. If you all ever get a chance to read uh Blue Marvel, Adam Brashear, please go read it. It is a great story of a character who is really taken from him. He's got a very scientific background. He served his country during the war, the Vietnam War, and you know, due to circumstances with experimentation, he became this guy that uh, was granted all these superpowers uh, that are alike to Superman. And so all this takes place during the civil rights movement. And there's a scene in this story where he's fighting this guy, and um, part of his mask gets torn off, and people realize he's black, and people are like freaking out. It's like, oh my God, he's black. And then the government gets involved, the CIA gets involved, and they're like, okay, what are we going to do about this guy? We don't want him to be aligned with the Black Panthers. And if he is, and this and that, it's going to turn how things are in this country, and blah, blah, blah. And Adam Bashir is like, yo, all I want to do is do the right thing. And so it was very interesting. It was a historical lesson. It was a very interesting perspective of how a black Superman type of character would handle being alive during the civil rights movement, and how people would react to being around him. And there were some very racial views in that story, especially from power, positions of power. And so you can see that, you can relate to that. And his wife at the time, he was in an interracial relationship, and it it was for him, at least, it was something that he thought was natural. On the flip side, it was basically her being one of those situations where she was actually a CIA spy, and but she actually fell in love with him. And the classic, oh, you was it really love? And he finds out, and she's trying to explain to him, no, it was really love, and this and that, but then she gets killed in the end. And so what Kevin Grevaux brought to the table was not just another black character into Marvel Comics, but was a question of what would it have been like for a guy to try to be a superhero back in the 1960s and 1970s, and what would it have been like for him. We kind of saw that in the TV show, oh my gosh, on HBO Max, oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of the name of the TV show with Regina King.
Watchmen.
Watchmen. We kind of saw that with Watchmen, and how the Danny Glover's, that was it Danny? No, Louis Gossett Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Jr.'s character, uh, you know, was basically a superhero growing up, or living his life during that time between the 40s and the 60s, and how bad that was. And so you kind of get that with Kevin Grevaux's character, Anna Brashear. And so it was important. It was great. And I'm really hoping that Marvel, or and Marvel, the MCU department of Marvel, and Disney bring that character. From what I've seen or read, it looks like they are going to bring Blue Marvel into the MCU. It probably won't be for a while, uh, but just having him there would be great. Uh, it's hard. It's rare to see, especially with the mainstream companies like DC and Marvel, to see Black characters created by African Americans. All right. We have Miles Morales, Spider-Man, who's great. I love Miles Morales, but he was created by Brian Michael Bendis, who's white. I got no problems with Brian Michael Bendis. I think he's awesome. But to actually have Black people create Black characters within the mainstream comics, I think is awesome. And I think what Kevin Greville did was great. I don't know how he did it. I don't know who he convinced to let him do this. But I think it's pretty important to have somebody who isn't from an alien planet or an alternate universe. Somebody who is born and bred in this country and grown up and trying to be a superhero during the civil rights movement, trying to survive, and then you see all this the consequences from it. I think it's awesome, and I love that Blue Marvel Adam Bashir was created, and I love that Kevin Greville did this. So that is my feature on um, uh, a creator for Black History Month.
Mike, I appreciate it. We've followed this man for quite some time, just in past episodes and just seeing his come up and all these other things. I'm excited to see what he does in the future as well. To see if he's got more stuff under his sleeve, or is he kind of just on cruise control now? But he's one of those guys that's been influential to the comic book universe, the geek culture, and all this stuff. And that dude has a litany of degrees. It's like literally his mom and dad said, "Hey, you will not, you will not do anything as far as writing and art. You will become a doctor or a lawyer first, and then if you want to still do your dreams, you can do your dreams." Because I remember looking at his biography back in the day, and it looked like that man stayed in school, and all this other stuff.
And it's awesome because he, you look at him from the Underworld movie. You would never expect a guy like that to create A, Underworld, and then B, create Anna Bashir, Blue Marvel, but have a background in some deep science shit. Like, this guy was going to do genetic engineering, and he's got a degree in microbiology. Like, you just wouldn't expect that. And to me, that's awesome because, like I said, it's hard to read certain characters or look for certain characters that you can relate to. I myself have a job that's very scientific, and I, going back to our image days where we're drawing and trying to make our own comics, trying to come up with an origin story for ourselves. It really brings a smile to my face, what Kevin Greville has been able to do, because I look at him and I see myself, and I'm like, man, I'm so glad that this dude came out. I'm so glad that there's somebody out there like me that can come out and create something that other people of our culture can look up to. And I think that's awesome.
Absolutely. And Mike, since we're talking about science, the gentleman who I'm going to mention, he started off as a systems analyst for McDonnell Douglas, Data General, and other various computer repair firms, which is near and dear to my heart because I'm in IT. We're talking about producer, director, storyboard artist, writer, consultant, Larry F. Houston. Now, I will be the first to tell you that I just recently heard about this gentleman maybe 6 months to a year ago through Twitter, because I happened to look at a posting about this gentleman where he was saying, I did the X-Men animation series, and then I was blown away and I needed to know more. And come to find out that Larry F. Houston was the person who came up with that dope intro for X-Men, the animated series. And so a few things here as I bring up his biography is that he is a Emmy nominated producer, director, like I said, of the X-Men, the phenomenally successful show of the 1990s, which we all know about. He was first hired by Filmation as the first African-American Saturday morning storyboard artist. He storyboarded and directed some of your favorite 80s and 90s classic shows as Thundar, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, G.I. Joe, G.I. Joe, the movie intro. If you don't know that G.I. Joe, the movie intro, like, look, you can say what you say about the movie, but that intro is fire. Fire. I look at that every so often.
Yo, that movie was fire.
Yeah, you're right. You know what? The movie is fire too. Let's not get it twisted. Mr. T, Batman, Johnny Quest, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Captain Planet, The Fantastic Four, Mighty Orbots, Bionic Six, Exo Squad, Bucky O'Hare, Jim, Galtar, Cop, Spawn, Ultimate Avengers 2, Community, and Kid and Play. And I say that all to say thank you, because that's literally my childhood. And I never knew. I'm a 40-year-old man. I never knew that this is what he brought to the table.
So he produced Exo Squad?
He had something to do, and he might have did storyboards or something. Hold on, I have his IMDb here. So looking at I saw Exo Squad just a moment ago. He even did Static Shock, right? Like, this dude was everywhere. For Exo Squad, he was a storyboard artist for all 52 episodes of Exo Squad, right?
Okay, all right.
For Batman the Animated Series, he did 4 episodes as a storyboard artist. Like, this man's, the thing that this man has accomplished is amazing, right? And I'm almost kind of upset at the same time that no one ever told me. These are the people I was looking for when I was coming up, and I never knew, and I'm glad to know them now. But it's one of those things that solidified that this was something, like Michael said, when we were drawing and doing writing, this is something I wanted to do, but I never understood how to take it from just typing up something on a word processor of all things to, something that you can make money off of, right? Now, mind you, he's a storyboard artist. I don't know if my art would have been as great as his in the terms of that, but just giving it an opportunity would have been great to see. But I'm glad to have found Larry F. Houston, because, like I said again, those shows, I've sat there with a bowl of cereal on Saturday mornings and just daydreamed the day away until my pops told me it's time to go do something.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, to Mr. Garreau and to Larry F. Houston, we say thank you for your contributions. And we'll bring you 2 more individuals who are detrimental to this. And we're going to try to do this for all of February, that we want to, celebrate during Black History Month. But that is, Mike, before we go, do you have anything to add before we sign out here?
Yeah, so Reacher for sure. Check out, y'all. If you, it's not sci-fi or anything like that, but it is a great book series. And from what I understand, Amazon Prime did right by the book series with this show. Also, not to forget, Book of Boba Fett. If y'all have not watched it, watch it. The last 2 episodes were insane. My goodness. Oh my goodness. It just a great show.
I need to catch up.
I'm behind. Oh my God. The last 2 episodes have been ridiculous. And then, of course, Peacemaker. We mentioned Peacemaker at the beginning of the show. Watch Peacemaker. I know people were kind of on the fence about the movie Suicide Squad. Peacemaker is the truth. I mean, my goodness, it's a great show. So definitely check that out. Check out the channel. Elias and I are looking to do more gameplay footage. In 2 or 3 weeks, Rodney, we're getting the Steam Deck. Hopefully.
Yes.
Hopefully.
I hope so. They
Rodney,
better not screw this up.
Yeah,
they better
Rodney,
not screw this up.
My gosh, hopefully we will get the Steam Deck.
Yeah.
And I will do some damn videos on this, okay?
Absolutely.
The Steam Deck comes out. It's basically a super beefed up Nintendo Switch. It's a computer that you can hold in your hands. Okay. And if you have Steam and you have a library full of games like Rodney and I have, okay, you can play those games anywhere.
And it's going to have a docking station so you can sit there and play it on your television.
Yes. And the greatest thing about this, especially if you're in your 40s and you have a family, okay, you can take that shit anywhere with you, right? Okay. I'm going to take it to work. I'm gonna sit at home on the couch while watching a TV show I don't even want to watch. Okay. Look, it has the potential to be the greatest gaming system out there because it's portable. So yes, Steam Deck comes out this month. I hope, Rodney, that you and I will get this. I really hope so.
I hope that it reaches the potential that it's supposed to.
I do too. I really do too. We're spending some money on this.
Yes. I would be devastated to get this thing and it can't even hold up to its end of the bargain.
Look, we're spending PS5 money on this.
Yep.
Okay. Absolutely. So I'm excited for all these things. We got videos coming out, y'all. Continue to watch Rodney's videos on the stuff that he's uploading. I've got a video coming out with gameplay footage. I've also got a video coming out with Matrix Resurrection. So please stick with us. Hit that subscribe button.
Before we close, I'm sorry. I should have probably said it early. Let me just give 2 recommendations for TV shows that I want to acknowledge. Number 1 is Archive 81 on Netflix. It's a very trippy, you can call it sci-fi / horror show, but I've loved every minute of it. It's been very exciting. And for those who need more stuff for the family, Raising Dion season 2 is out. Me and the family watched Raising Dion season 1. Look, I'm just going to say the production budget could be better, but I respect it for what it is. It's there for your kids to enjoy something without them seeing too much violence and nudity.
Real quick before we do sign off, the last episode, you were planning on watching, I don't know if you did or not, with your family. This is it was a Netflix show.
All of Us Are Dead.
All of Us Are Dead. How was that?
We loved it. We binge watched that whole thing literally the whole weekend, right? Like I said, we love a good zombie flick. It's still your standard zombie flick, just set in a different setting. There are some different rules for the zombies in this one compared to others, but there's a bit going on that I don't want to give it away because it's still fairly new. But we enjoyed it. And but we also, at least in my hopes, after the ending that we were given, I hope it ends right here and that there's not this fever pitch to make a season 2, because I think it ended on a pretty decent note. That if you keep it right there, it's 10 episodes, maybe 12 episodes, but each one of them were pretty good. Not a lot of fluff. They got straight to it. A lot of people who I assume were going to be alive didn't make it to the end. And but it's just the way I love my horror and my zombie flicks.
Well, just to be clear, this is a South Korean flick, right?
Yes.
Okay.
If you enjoy Train to Busan, I think you'll enjoy All of Us Are Dead.
Okay.
Truthfully.
Good stuff.
Mike, why don't you go ahead and send us out?
All right. Hey folks, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead, hit that like button, and leave a comment. We would love to hear what y'all have to say about the show. We're always looking for ideas and feedback for our next episodes. Until then, check us out, Nation80 Comics, or see, I just did what Rodney did the last episode, the Nation80 Podcast.
Yes, sir.
Check us out next time. Keep imagining, keep dreaming, keep your nerd up. We'll catch you in the next one.